Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipse, and as always, I have the great pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Shifman. How are you today, Matt?
I am good, Brian. We are well into December and well on our way out of 2024.
2024. Matt, as many problems as horse racing has, as often as it can disappoint us, the horses are the stars, and we had no shortage of great races and great horses running this year in 2024. So we want to celebrate it. This is our best of 2024 show. I think it'll be a fun show. So stick around, folks. Let's start with the top moments in 2024, Matt. And I guess if we're going to start with this list, let's start with the winter. Let's start with almost 12 months ago. And we're going to start with this guy. That's National Treasure, Matt. And National Treasure faced a test. I think there were still questions of whether National Treasure was going to be the type of horse who could be a champion. Maybe there are still some questions, but in the Pegasus, he ran a big race against a big field for big money. He held off Senor Buscador, who was in prime shape at that time, and it got the year off to a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. And this national treasure, I think, has turned out to be that kind of horse. He has absolutely run some big races in his career and did so impressively in that Pegasus.
Yeah, the Pegasus may not be what it was at the very inception with even more money and even more talk or hype, but it was a good Pegasus. National Treasure was a deserving game winner. Won the Preakness the year before, won the Met Mile this year, and as of right now, Matt, I think he's got to be the favorite with those two Grade One wins this year, including the Pegasus, to be the champion older male.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting to think about, and I think as we go along with this show, I mean, it was just a capsule of what the racing turned out to be with that older male dirt division, just not having that many horses that could perform consistently or that had that kind of star power as opposed to others that I think are going to dominate this show.
Yeah, it was the year of the three-year-old for sure in 2024. So, as we go from the winter top moments of the winter to top moments of the spring, we're gonna see three-year-olds, and let's start with the ladies first. There's my favorite horse, Matt, Thorpedo Anna winning that Kentucky Oaks. She wasn't the favorite. It's hard to even believe looking back now, but Thorpedo Anna was not the favorite in the Kentucky Oaks, but she won convincingly. It started an historic weekend for her connections, and she was pressured in fast fractions in this Oaks, and she drew off down the stretch. Big win.
It was a big win, and wow, you bring that up, Brian, and I'm glad you did, and I agree. It's very hard to believe, certainly looking back, that Torpedo Anna was not the favorite in the Kentucky Oaks. She started to flash her brilliance earlier in the year, and we got to see her break her maiden not that long ago, and now here she is uh, on the precipice of probably being horse of the year.
I don't think I think there's little doubt, Matt. She's going to be horse of the year, and I'm very happy about it. Um, she wasn't a favorite. She was my top pick in the Kentucky Oaks, and things have just gotten better and better for Torpedo Anna as the year went on. Matt, who rode her and who trained her for this Kentucky Oaks win?
Yeah, it was the combination of Kenny McPeak and Brian Hernandez Jr. with the rare Kentucky Oaks, Kentucky Derby, uh, not daily double, but double wins on that big weekend of racing in the spring, in the first weekend of May.
Yeah, it's not really done, or it's been a long time since it was done for one trainer to win both the Kentucky Oaks and the Kentucky Derby in the same 2 days, and rare for a jockey. Other jockeys had done it more recently than trainers, but Brian Hernandez, a guy who kind of rides well all the time, but under the radar. And maybe we could say the same thing about Kenny McPeak, but this was a huge double for those two gentlemen. And more than that, the Kentucky Derby was, as it's meant to be, the race of the spring, because what we saw down the stretch with Mystic Dan spurting out early on the rail, and then the entire stretch drive, wild bumping stretch drive with Sierra Leone and Forever Young humming at him. It was a thrilling Kentucky Derby, a thrilling finish.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the picture we have up on the screen from our friends at Eclipse Sports Wire shows that stretch drive, shows how amazingly close the finish of the Kentucky Derby is, and we don't have blanket finishes in the Kentucky Derby that often.
Now, yeah, it easily could have been won by any one of the three horses. Mystic Dan, the long shot winner. We haven't seen him the second half of the year, but we look forward to the return of Mystic Dan soon, actually in a couple of weeks out in California. Of course, we know Sierra Leone and Forever Young, two horses we're going to talk about more as the show goes on. But what a terrific Kentucky Derby that was. The race of the spring. We got to give props, though, to Thorpedo Anna and, of course, Kenny McPeak and Brian Hernandez on that Oaks Derby double. As we move into the summer, Matt, a really good summer. Dornoch was a big part of the summer. Um, Fierceness was a big part of the summer. Thorpedo Anna continued her march into the summer. Sierra Leone kept knocking on the door as he did in the Kentucky Derby, and it all kind of came together in a perfect storm for this race that we attended together at Saratoga. Race of the summer, top moment of the summer, race of the year in my eyes.
Yep, you're talking about the 3-year-olds here, Brian, and the names that we brought up so many times with Fierceness, with Sierra Leone. You mentioned Dornoch; he wasn't in this, but and Thorpedo Anna, and what a race it was! Fierceness on the lead, Thorpedo Anna getting out from a little bit of a tight spot on the inside, getting clear and coming fast, but coming up just shy.
Yeah, the fact that it had a 3-year-old filly in this Travers, we've never seen a 3-year-old filly run nearly this well in the Travers in the history of the big summer race. That certainly added something to it. But it was also just a really nice field. I mean, there were good horses who were running. You mentioned Dornoch in fourth and Batten Down in fifth, Unmatched Wisdom, Anna Marie. It really was a nice, solid field. There were no allowance horses in the Strivers, and I think the top 3, the winner, of course, Fierceness, who's unbeaten at Saratoga, loves Saratoga, Torpedo Anna, and Sierra Leone, who went on to become Breeders' Cup winners. They they put themselves ahead of the rest, and I think what we're going to see in the Horse of the Year race, the 3 finalists will be the same 3 horses that ran in this Travers. I really can't say enough about how good that Travers was this year.
Yeah, no question about it, Brian. It was a rare and exciting version of the Travers this summer.
Yeah, and as we move to the Breeders' Cup, we saw how good that Travers was, and those will be our top moments of the fall, Matt. Let's start at the top, and in a lot of ways, the Breeders' Cup Classic is America's top race. The Kentucky Derby still holds more prestige, if you will, but the Breeders' Cup Classic is kind of the race that decides things at the end of the year. And I think we had a really good international field. There was international intrigue, Matt Shifman, in this Breeders' Cup Classic. And Sierra Leone, after kind of knocking on the door, he won some early races. He won in New Orleans. He won at Keeneland early in the year, but he had been knocking on the door for so long after that. And to see him look at this big, beautiful, mature looking version of Sierra Leone running down the stretch in the Breeders' Cup Classic. It was fun to see.
It was fun to see, and it was great for racing, and it was also great for racing that Sierra Leone was a horse that was around pretty much the entire year with no time off. He had run in Remsen in 2023 at the beginning of that winter, and then into 2024 on the Kentucky Derby Trail, which it has always been and continues to be a goal for trainer Chad Brown, winning the Bluegrass, but then kept running in big races and big races all the way up to the Classic. Unusual for Chad to have a horse making that many starts, but he was after big prizes with Sierra Leone, and he got them with a victory in the Classic, the I don't know, the second biggest race in America, I guess.
The second biggest, or like I said, in some ways the biggest. Maybe the Travers was the race of the year. Maybe the Kentucky Derby has more prestige, but the Breeders' Cup Classic is no doubt more important when you look at the landscape of American racing. Big win, as you said, for Chad Brown. Also, Flavien Prat aboard Sierra Leone. I think that's a big story here as well. Also, who else was in the race? Notably, you can see it up there in the screen in the upper left. Notably, Fierceness ran a big race. He ran his race in the Breeders' Cup Classic with a strong early pace. Forever Young there, getting up for third as well, the Japanese superstar, who I don't think should be overlooked in this discussion as well. A big Breeders' Cup Classic, but that's not our only top moment from the Breeders' Cup. But because we got to talk about the filly again. I think the distaff was kind of a crowning race, a feel good race, if you will. One of the best older females in the country, Raging Sea, was left as her lone main competition here, and Thorpedo Anna dominated that very good older filly in the distaff. It was decisive. It was easy. It was Thorpedo Anna jogging her way down the stretch to probably an historic Horse of the Year award, because Horse of the Year does not go to three-year-old fillies more than once in basically a lifetime. She's about to become the second three-year-old filly in the last 79 years to be named Horse of the Year. The Breeders' Cup Distaff was just a nice moment.
It certainly was, and for me, heading into the Breeders' Cup, it was probably the race that I was looking forward to seeing most. Not because I expected, an upset finish or anything that was going to be close, but I was looking for Thorpedo Anna to continue to do what she has been doing this year, and she absolutely did that.
Yeah, in some ways, me too. Certainly not from the betting standpoint. She was odds on. The horse who was her main competition was easily second, but it just was a feel good story seeing Torpedo Anna do that on the Breeders' Cup stage after everything she had already done this year. All right, Matt, we're gonna kind of shift gears here a little bit. We haven't talked about the humans from 2024, and even when we did our Eclipse Award pick show earlier. So let's talk about them a little bit. And we've mentioned some of them already. The first one I want to mention, this is a guy who I've been a fan of for a long time, literally decades, and he has been under the radar. He's had a lot of good horses within this span, but he had never won a Breeders' Cup race. I'm talking, of course, of Kenny McPeek, and Kenny McPeek is a guy, and I think this is part of the reason why I would like to see Kenny McPeek win the Eclipse Award this year. He's a guy who does it with horses that are not expensive horses. He's not going out and spending millions of dollars, or he doesn't have owners that are spending millions of dollars at the yearling sales. And still he won the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks, the first trainer in 6 or more decades to do that. Recently came back in the Clark. What a terrific training job that was, getting rattled and rolled to come back after nearly a year off in his second race and win a very big race in the fall. Promising two-year-olds are in the barn. He's had plenty of other stakes winners, but Mystic Dan winning the Derby, Torpedo Anna winning the Oaks, historic. and he trained the horse who we're both agreeing is gonna be horse of the year.
Yeah, a great year for Kenny McPeak, a guy uh, whose enthusiasm for horse racing is contagious, and I'm sure why he has owners that are have been loyal to what he does. And yes, he does amazing things at the sales. Getting really good horses for bargain prices, 20, 30, $40,000, and rarely going above like two, 300,000 for a horse with great success. I mean, you can see his commitment to racing. He loves racing. Hey, and he's great in the spotlight.
Yeah, he is, and he made his horses, including most notably, of course, Thorpedo Anna, very accessible to the fans. They did think for the fans. That's a nice thing. That shouldn't play a part in the Trainer of the Year award. And I think it is an interesting question: who will be the Trainer of the Award be, a year? Because McPeak falls down the standings a little bit when you're talking about total wins and total money. And total money one is usually what decides it. And if we're talking about total money, then the guy that you think is going to be the Eclipse Award winner, he's a $30 million man.
Yeah, we're talking about Chad Brown, of course, who has been trainer of the year many times. Big barn, lots of horses, wins wins big races as much as anybody. And as you said, Brian, typically the trainer of the year and jockey of the year go to the people who are at the top of those standings for earnings, for number of wins, for what they do day in and day out all year long. And that certainly is Chad Brown. Kenny McPeak again deserves a lot of credit. As we talked about earlier, that Oaks Derby double for a trainer is very rare, and we're talking about in there. He will be the trainer of the horse of the year. Brown is likely to be the trainer of the top 3-year-old of the year.
Yeah, yeah, the Breeders' Cup Classic, and the job he did with Sierra Leone. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's almost a typical year for Chad Brown because he has such a armada of strong horses. So maybe I'm holding that against Chad Brown here, or maybe I just see it as an historic year for Kenny McPeak. But Brown did a great training job with Sierra Leone because that horse was not an easy horse to train, as we saw in the Kentucky Derby, most notably, and Brown got him running his very best on the big stage of the Breeders' Cup Classic. So it's a deserving winner. A lot of the things I said about Kenny McPeak, perhaps I could say about Brian Hernandez Jr. However, I don't think that Brian Hernandez Jr.'s year is going to trump what Flavian Prat did this year as a rider. For a few years now, I thought that Prat was the best rider in America, and I think this year he kind of just he answered that question, "Is he the best rider in the country?" with just an amazing year. What he did at Saratoga, what he did all year long. We've talked about different riders, as big race riders back in the day, maybe Willie Shoemaker, Angel Cordero, more recently, Mike Smith, Johnny Velasquez. It's clear to me Flavian Prat has become the big race rider of right now.
He just had a phenomenal year. Brian came over from France to take a shot in America and began his career in America on the West Coast, and not too many years ago, I'll say 3 or 4 years ago, but it was probably been more than that at this point, decided that he would come east to New York to see what he could do on the biggest circuit in the country. And this year is just, is just a crowning performance. I was at Aqueduct on Saturday when Flavian Pratt won one of the stakes races on the card, which not only did he has he had a big year with earnings and such, but he set the record for the most stakes wins in a jock by a jockey in a year, and after Saturday, he sits tied for the most graded stakes races in a year with the great Jerry Bailey.
Yeah, yeah, Pratt did it all this year. Let's talk about the Breeders' Cup. Two big winners at the Breeders' Cup. Neither of them were one of the favorites actually in the race. Neither were long shots per se, but Sierra Leone and Moira were not two of the favorites in the Classic and the Philly and Mare Distaff. Pratt got them home, which pushed him basically to a safe place. Irad Ortiz Jr. actually led the money race for much of the year, but Pratt powered by him there at the Breeders' Cup. Yeah, stakes wins, graded stakes wins, set the record at Saratoga. An amazing year for Flavien Prat. All right, we're going to change gears again, Matt, and this is interesting. You know, we went with different trainers. You went with Brown. I went with McPeak. We both agree on Pratt as the jockey of the year. But then I said, let's talk about our favorite horse who is not a champion or is not going to be a champion in 2024. I was looking for more of an under the radar type of a dark horse, and we went completely different ways here. Honestly, mine is Post Time, and perhaps if Post Time had gotten up in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile 2 races back, um, we would be talking about him as the top. Older dirt male up for an Eclipse Award. But he ran a big race in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile to run second. And my point about Post Time in 9 races this year, if you look at his career, 15 races in his life, he always runs big. He's never been worse than third. After that Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile performance where he was really running down the stretch, he came back and cut back to one turn in a race that I think was certainly grade 1 quality in this recent Cigar Mile, and was really running down the stretch again. Only got 3rd there, but just a big year, a consistent year. He's a Maryland bred. He's trained by Brittany Russell. He's ridden by her husband, Sheldon Russell. It's a good story all the way around. He's my favorite non-champion.
And I can't blame you, Brian. I love this horse. He was actually my pick in the Cigar Mile. So much respect for what he does every single time he shows up on the track. And you said it, not just 3 times this year, Brian, not just 5 times this year, but 9 times this year. So he's a bit of a throwback horse in the number of times that he's run and with his performances. So I can't argue with your pick of Post Time. I went a little bit differently. I went to Fierceness. I was a little bit of a fierce supporter of Fierceness throughout the year. I found it difficult to listen to people who were so quick to put knocks on this horse that he couldn't win 2 races in a row, that he was incapable of overcoming adversity. So for me, I enjoyed seeing his performance as the year went along. His victory in Travers, putting together wins at Saratoga, and then his gutsy performance in the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Yeah, I think all doubts about fierceness were put to bed in those last 2 races. The Travers was a, remarkable race, and he was the winner, game winner of that Travers, going a mile and a quarter. That was one of the doubts I had about fierceness. Did he want a mile and a quarter? And then he came back in the Breeders' Cup Classic and chased a very fast pace there and stuck around really, really well. Sierra Leone was a locomotive coming down the lane, but fierceness was clearly second best there. So I can't blame you. You took a leap of faith, saying Sierra Leone is going to be the 3-year-old champion there, and I do agree. Although I know a lot of people are supporting Fierceness for that award, so we still have to see that. But I think you're probably right. He won't be a champion this year. 2-year-old champion last year, and lot to love with Fierceness. He did have a minor surgery after the Breeders' Cup Classic, and we won't see him early in the year, but expected to start training in late winter, early spring, and maybe the Met Mile. will be his return race, or maybe even sooner for Fierceness. All right, that's 2024, but let's talk about everything good we have coming in 2025, Matt. And I think the list is nice. We can start in an obvious place, or at least an obvious place for me, and that's with Thorpedo Anna. She's the horse I most look forward to coming back next year in 2025. The fillies don't retire as readily as the males, so it's no surprise that she'll be back after her huge 3-year-old filly season. She is a bear for no pun intended. She's a bear for competition. She is a bear for work. And that's one of the reasons I think Torpedo Anna will not be one of those fillies who kind of falls by the wayside, maybe as hormones or the thoughts of motherhood kick in. I think Torpedo Anna loves what she does, and a more mature, even better version of Torpedo Anna could be something exciting to see next year.
Yeah, and you can see that in that picture on the screen with Thorpedo Anna up at Saratoga, getting her morning exercise, and you can see that she's a handful right there for uh, for her regular exercise rider. And sure, uh, I look forward to seeing her back next year, along with a couple of the other big 3-year-old names that we've been talking about. It's great to hear that Sierra Leone's going to be back and Fierceness is going to be back. Imagine the kind of matchups that we might have. How many times are we going to see Torpedo Anna running against the guys this year? Another thing to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see Torpedo and his schedule, which I think will culminate in the Breeders' Cup Classic, knock on wood, if all things go well. We'll also expect to see Sierra Leone point to, hey, there's only been one horse, Matt, that's won the Breeders' Cup Classic more than once. That's Tisnow, the Sierra Leone. Think about how he filled out, $2.1 million yearling. He's just looking bigger and stronger as the months go by. As the son of gun runner, there's every reason to believe that this big time rallier could be a better horse as an older horse, and he would be number two on my list. And I see he's number two on your list of horses we can't wait to see next year.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Certainly a horse that has done so much, and who knows what we can expect from him next year.
Yeah, could be a mile and a quarter monster, but not as many big mile and a quarter races for older horses as there used to be, but Breeders' Cup Classic is the big one. Um, we'd be remiss, of course, not to talk about a horse we talked about a bunch already today, Fierceness. Great to see. I thought he was off to the breeding shed, honestly, after the Breeders' Cup Classic. Rapoli wants to keep him running. So Rapoli, Pletcher, Velasquez, great team, and Fierceness. Now he's run several good races in a row, very good races in a row. Uh, Always a exciting horse when he ran his best. He looks to be over things that got in his way a few times earlier in his career.
Yeah, and certainly owner Mike Rapoli is the kind of guy that likes to run his horses. He does not, with his financial situation, he does not need to rush them off to the stallion barn to pick up the money right away. So say what you will about Rapoli, but he is always sporting and always has the best in mind for horse racing and the racing fans.
Yeah, he's got Mindframe coming back next year. That's something to look forward to as well. And Pletcher has lots coming back next year as well. This is an exciting horse, Matt, because as a 2-year-old, this son of gun runner was a very promising 2-year-old. Grade one winner at two, in fact, and he certainly was high on my list for the Kentucky Derby. Things did not go well for a while, and we didn't see luck for nearly a year. Who knows what you're going to get after nearly a year off? But his two races at Aqueduct, um, huge is the word that comes to mind. Who knows how good Locked may be? He's got to be on our list of horses we can't wait to see next year.
Yeah, that's for sure. He was away for almost a year after such a promising start as a 2-year-old. After the Cigar Mile, speaking to uh, co-owner Aaron Yagoda, he talked about the fact that it took them a long time to figure out what was going on with Locked, and the vets worked hard and found a very rare kind of ligament problem in one of his knees, and didn't need surgery, just needed time. He got that time, and you're right, Brian. Wow, he came back impressively. The he To the extent that he was very heavily bet going into the cigar mile, which surprised me a little when I saw him open up at like 8 to 5 or 9 to 5 kind of price. But wow, he ran up to it, following up that big allowance win, comeback, beating this very strong field of older horses in the cigar mile.
Yeah, and there's every reason to believe that Locke will appreciate 2 turns. He's run 2 turns as a two-year-old, and he looked very good doing it. But both of these races, these return races were 1 turn. Next year, 2 turns locked. We might see early in the year races like the Pegasus and the Saudi Cup and the Dubai World Cup. Exciting, of course, next year. I didn't have any two-year-olds on my top horses to look forward to next year, and that's because I'm so excited about what we're getting back from this great three-year-old crop of fillies and colts. But you did, and here she is. I'll let you take it, Matt.
Yeah, and I could have maybe picked out other 2 year olds. I picked out Immersive as an example of a 2 year old that I really look forward to seeing next year. This is for Brad Cox. Brad Cox has got a whole bunch of really talented 2 year old fillies that I look forward to seeing this year, led by Immersive, who has 4 starts and 4 impressive victories.
Yeah, I don't even know if she's the best Godolphin homebred two-year-old filly in that barn. In fact, that's what I wrote about in my recent column, how loaded he is. Good Cheer is the other Godolphin homebred in his barn that I'm so high on. It'll be interesting to see how Cox keeps them apart until the Kentucky Oaks and what they do in the Kentucky Oaks. My fifth horse was the only non-American on the list, and that's Forever Young. Forever Young is undefeated in Japan, Dubai, Saudi Arabia. He keeps running big races. He was third in the Kentucky Derby. He was third in the Breeders' Cup Classic. I say he was unlucky in both. Everybody knows the Kentucky Derby. He narrowly lost and he was bumped the whole stretch. I just didn't like the ride he got when he was third behind Sierra Leone and Fierceness in that race. And I'm not taking anything away from Sierra Leone. Fierceness is the best 2 horses in the Breeders' Cup Classic, but I thought Forever Young could have been a whole lot closer with a better ride there. Forever Young, consistent as they come, and he's gonna keep coming to America.
Yeah, I guess so. And as we head out of this show and look ahead to next year with some of these stars that we've mentioned about, we have to wonder which ones are going to head to the Middle East for the big money in the Saudi Cup and the Dubai World Cup, and how that may affect when we get to see some of these stars in our country.
Yeah, yeah, we can expect to see Forever Young in those races, certainly. Matt, was that your parting shot, or do you have more for me?
Oh no, we can go with that. There's so much to look forward to. I think this was an interesting way for us to recap a really good year of racing in 2024.
Yeah, and it's exciting to see the horses that will be coming back next year, which is a great thing and something racing needs. Thanks to Eclipse Sports Wire for all the photos we used on today's show, and our sponsor, Derby Wars, the best contest site out there. Most of all, thanks to you folks for watching every week here on Horse Center. Matt and I sure do appreciate it. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and do that. Turn on those notifications. We love to get comments as well. Thumbs up are good too. For now, we'll say goodbye. Have a good weekend. We'll see you right here next week on another edition of Horse Center.